When I turned 65, I threw a party for the family. No one came. The words hit me like a cold slap, but I didn't react. I simply smiled, though inside, a storm was brewing. The table was set, the candles lit, and the food was warm, all prepared with care. I had spent weeks planning, thinking this would be a day of celebration, of family gathering around me, honoring the years I had spent raising them. But instead, I sat alone in the dim light of the dining room, staring at the empty chairs. The clock ticked loudly in the silence, reminding me of how long I had been waiting. I checked my phone again, wondering if anyone had sent an apology or at least a message explaining their absence. Nothing. No text. No call. Just silence. My son, Mark, had promised he would be here. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, too. But now, it was clear that they weren't coming. They weren't going to show up for me, not on my special day. It was as if the years of nurturing them, of being there through every hard moment, had amounted to nothing. I poured myself a glass of wine and took a deep breath, trying to steady my shaking hands. As I sipped, the sting of rejection settled deep within me. This wasn't just about a missed birthday. No, it was the culmination of years of feeling ignored, pushed aside, and discarded. I had given them everything, and yet here I was, alone. I tried to convince myself that it was just a misunderstanding, that something had come up, but deep down, I knew better. They didn't care. This wasn't the first time, either. How many family gatherings had I attended, sitting through the awkward silences, the dismissive looks, the subtle jabs? I had been the glue holding it all together for so many years, and now it felt as if I was no longer needed. The phone buzzed. It was a notification from social media. I opened it, only to see a picture of Sarah, Mark, and the kids, all smiling on a beach somewhere. The caption read, "Living our best life. Enjoying family time while I get some well-deserved relaxation." My heart sank. How could they be so heartless? How could they so easily disregard me, the person who had always been there for them? My hands tightened. Around the phone. I wasn't even worth a call. I wasn't even worth a thought on my own birthday. I set the phone down with trembling fingers and looked around the room. The house that once echoed with laughter now felt cold and empty, a hollow shell of what it used to be. The truth was settling in. This wasn't just a missed party. This was the reality I had been avoiding for far too long. They were done with me. My family was no longer my family. I had become a stranger in my own home. I didn't know what hurt more, the silence or the realization that I no longer mattered to the people I had spent my whole life loving. I stood up slowly, my legs feeling heavy beneath me. I walked over to the window and looked out at the quiet street. The sun was setting, casting a warm glow over everything, but the warmth didn't reach me. It didn't matter anymore. I had done my part. I had given my love, my time, my care. But it was never enough. And now, I had nothing left to give. The silence of the room seemed to stretch on forever, and I knew then that I was on my own. It was time to face the truth. The truth that my family, the people I had dedicated my life to, had walked away. But this time, I wasn't going to beg them to stay. I wasn't going to chase after them anymore. I was done. The next day, I sat in the same spot at the dining table, still staring at the untouched plates. The sun had risen, but I couldn't shake off the heaviness in my chest. The house was eerily quiet, the silence filling every corner like a thick fog. I had expected the phone to ring or someone to show up, but nothing. The loneliness felt more pronounced in the light of day, as if the absence of my family was even more real now. I had lived here for so long, in this house that I had shared with my husband, Jack. It was our home, our sanctuary. But now, it felt like a tomb. I stood up slowly, moving toward the window. The view was the same as it had been for years, trees lining the street, the sun shining brightly in the sky. But none of it mattered. Nothing felt the same anymore. I thought about the days when the house would be filled with laughter, when we would have dinner together, the kids running around. That seemed like a lifetime ago. I felt a pang in my chest as I thought about my son, Mark. I had raised him to be kind, to appreciate family, and yet here he was, ignoring me, leaving me to deal with my own pain. He wasn't even the one who had hurt me the most, though. That title went to Sarah, my daughter-in-law. She had been so sweet when we first met. I had welcomed her into our home with open arms, treated her like a daughter. But now, I realized how wrong I had been. Sarah had always been calculating, manipulating Mark, and slowly pushing me aside. It had started small, little comments here and there, a tone that seemed just a bit too sharp. But over time, those little things had added up, and I had ignored them. I had convinced myself that it was just a phase, that things would get better. But now, it was clear to me that I had been a fool. I had allowed myself to be pushed aside, to be ignored. I had let Sarah take over, and I hadn't fought back. I had been too afraid, too unsure of myself. But not anymore. I could feel something stirring inside me, a fire I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't going to let them do this to me. I wasn't going to let Sarah continue to walk all over me, to use my son and my family for her own gain. It was time to stand up for myself. I wasn't going to cry anymore. I wasn't going to beg for attention. I had given them everything, and they had thrown it all away. But I wasn't going to let them break me. I walked over to the living room, my feet heavy on the hardwood floor. The room was just as empty as the dining room, the silence deafening. I sat down on the couch, staring at the photographs on the mantel. Pictures of Mark when he was a child, of our family vacations, of the good times we had shared. I picked up one of the frames, my fingers brushing the glass. It felt like a lifetime ago. The memories felt distant, like they belonged to someone else. But they were mine. I had built this life. I had given everything to this family, and now, it was time to take it all back. It wasn't going to be easy. I knew that. But I wasn't afraid anymore. The tears that had once been so easy to shed were gone, replaced by a quiet determination. I wasn't going to let them see me cry. I wasn't going to let them see me break. I would fight back, and I would win. I didn't know exactly how I was going to do it, but I knew that I couldn't keep living this way. I couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed to make a change. And I was going to start by confronting Sarah. I wasn't going to let her get away with what she had done. I wasn't going to let her tear my family apart any longer. It was time to take control of my life again. I had spent too many years letting others decide what my life should be. It was my turn now. I wasn't going to sit back and watch them destroy everything I had worked for. I would fight for my place in this family, and I wouldn't stop until I had it. The next morning, I found myself standing at the kitchen counter, a cup of coffee in my hands, staring out the window at the same street I had watched for years. The sun was bright, but it did little to warm the chill in my heart. I had been waiting for a sign, for something to shift, for someone to reach out. But no one did. The silence was overwhelming, and I realized, with a sinking feeling, that it wasn't just the silence of an empty house, it was the silence of abandonment. Mark, my son, hadn't called. Sarah hadn't texted. I hadn't heard from anyone. I thought back to the night before, sitting at that dining table alone, the empty plates in front of me a stark reminder of how little I mattered to them. I wasn't just disappointed, I was devastated. But as the day wore on, something began to shift within me. The sense of powerlessness started to give way to something else. I wasn't going to sit here anymore, waiting for them to change. I had waited long enough. I had spent so many years putting their needs first, silencing my own desires, thinking that if I just kept being the loving mother, the dutiful wife, they would eventually see me, appreciate me. But they didn't. And it was time I stopped pretending that it was okay. I had raised Mark to be a good man, to value family. I had worked so hard to create a home, a place of love, and now it felt like all of it was slipping through my fingers. But I wasn't going to let it slip away without a fight. It was time to stop letting Sarah walk all over me. I had given her everything. I had welcomed her into my family, into my life, but now I could see her for who she really was. Sarah wasn't the sweet girl I had thought she was. She was calculating, manipulative, and selfish. And she had taken advantage of my kindness for far too long. I wasn't going to let her control my life anymore. As the day dragged on, I found myself thinking about how to approach her. I needed to confront her, but I didn't want to do it out of anger. I needed to approach it with clarity, with strength. I couldn't let her see how much she had hurt me, not yet. I needed to stay composed. I walked to the living room, where the photos of my family were still on the mantel. I picked up one of the pictures of Mark as a child, smiling in the summer sun, and my heart tightened in my chest. This was the boy I had raised, the boy who had promised me he would always take care of me. Where was that promise now? I put the photo down gently and turned around, walking back to the kitchen. I had to face the truth. Mark had changed, and I needed to figure out how to deal with it. He wasn't the same son I had known. The warmth I had once felt from him was gone, replaced by distance and indifference. The realization hit me like a wave. Mark was no longer on my side. He was on Sarah's side. And I had to accept that. But acceptance didn't mean I had to give up. No, I was done being passive. I was done pretending that everything was fine when it wasn't. I needed to find my voice again. I needed to stop letting Sarah and Mark dictate my life. It wasn't going to be easy. I had spent so many years living for them, making sacrifices, and now I had to live for myself. It was time to take control of my own life again. I wasn't going to sit around and let them destroy everything I had worked for. I had to do something. I had to stand up for myself. I couldn't keep being the victim. I had given so much to my family, and now it was time to take back what was mine. I would confront Sarah. I would talk to Mark. I would not let them continue to walk all over me. And I wasn't going to let them make me feel small anymore. The pain of the past days still lingered, but a new feeling was rising inside me. A sense of purpose. A sense of power. And I wasn't going to let go of it. The time had come for me to take back control. And I would. I would take back my life. The next day, I decided it was time to stop waiting. I couldn't sit around any longer, wondering if things would change on their own. I had to take control, and that meant confronting Sarah. I had spent so many years letting her get away with things, letting her manipulate situations, all in the name of keeping peace, but I couldn't do that anymore. The silence in the house was suffocating. I could hear the sound of my own heartbeat as I walked through the hall, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The memories of laughter, of conversations, of moments I thought I would cherish forever, seemed so far away now. But as I passed the dining room, I stopped. I stood there, for what felt like an eternity, looking at the empty table where we used to sit together. I remembered the times when the room was filled with warmth, with love. And now, it was just another reminder of how everything had fallen apart. I was tired. Tired of pretending everything was fine. Tired of being treated like an afterthought in my own home. It was time to stop. I picked up my phone and called Sarah. My hand was steady, but my heart was racing. I wasn't sure what to expect, but I knew I couldn't let her think she could walk all over me anymore. The phone rang a few times before she answered. Hello? Her voice sounded polite, but there was something off about it, something distant. Sarah, we need to talk, I said, my voice calm but firm. There was a long pause on the other end. I could almost hear her thinking, wondering what this was about. Finally, she spoke. Talk about what? Her tone was guarded, like she already knew something was wrong. About how you and Mark have treated me lately, I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't deserve this. I've spent my life supporting this family, but all I've gotten in return is disrespect. The silence on the other end was deafening. I waited for her to respond, but all I could hear was her breath, shallow and uncertain. I don't know what you're talking about, Sarah said after a moment. I could feel the lie in her voice. It was too easy for her to act like nothing had happened. You know exactly what I'm talking about, I said. The way you've pushed me aside, the way you've manipulated Mark, and the way you've treated me like I don't matter. Another pause. Margaret, you're overreacting. We've just been busy, Sarah said, her voice trying to sound sweet, but I could hear the edge of irritation underneath. Busy? I repeated, my frustration growing. You expect me to believe that? I've been sitting here, alone, on my birthday, while you and Mark go off on your little vacation without a word to me. Don't act like I'm being unreasonable. There was a long silence, and for a moment, I thought she might hang up. But instead, she finally spoke, her voice colder now. I didn't think you'd mind. You're always so independent, Margaret. I thought you'd enjoy some time alone. The way she said it, as if I were some burden to be managed, made my blood run cold. Time alone? I echoed, my voice tight. You think I want to be alone? Do you have any idea how hurtful it is to feel like I'm nothing but an inconvenience to my own family? I could hear her sigh on the other end. Look, I'm sorry if you feel that way, she said, but her words were hollow, empty. But Mark and I have our own lives now. We're trying to start a family, and things are just complicated. Complicated? I asked, my voice shaking now. You're telling me things are complicated? Sarah, this isn't about complications. This is about respect. And I deserve that respect. Another pause. Then, finally, she spoke, her voice flat. I didn't mean to hurt you, Margaret. But maybe it's time for you to consider moving on. You're getting older, and this house, this life, it's too much for you. I felt the words hit me like a slap. Too much for me. I repeated, my breath catching in my throat. This house is mine. It was mine and Jack's. You don't get to tell me what I can and can't do. There was a long pause before she responded, her voice dripping with something that almost sounded like pity. I'm just trying to help you, Margaret. You've done your part. It's time to let go. Let go? I asked, my voice barely a whisper now. You want me to let go of everything? Of my home, my family, my life? No, Sarah. I'm not letting go. Not now, not ever. The phone went silent again, but this time, I didn't wait for her to speak. I hung up, my hands shaking as I put the phone down. For the first time in a long while, I felt something other than sadness. I felt anger. Anger at Sarah for her manipulation, at Mark for letting her do it, and at myself for allowing it to go on for so long. But more than that, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let them dictate my life anymore. I had spent too many years catering to them, making sacrifices, letting them walk all over me. But that was over now. I was taking back control. And I wasn't going to let anyone stop me. The next morning, I woke up to the same empty house, but today felt different. Something had shifted inside me after that conversation with Sarah. I wasn't going to sit by and let her manipulate me anymore. The weight of the past few days pressed heavily on my chest, but I could feel something changing. I was tired of being passive, tired of feeling small, tired of allowing myself to be the one who always gave in. The anger was still there, simmering under the surface, but it wasn't consuming me like it used to. Instead, it was pushing me forward, making me stronger, making me see that I wasn't helpless. I wasn't alone. I had my own life to live. The house was still quiet, but it didn't feel as suffocating as it had the day before. I walked into the kitchen and started making myself a cup of coffee. It was a small thing, a routine thing, but it felt different today. I wasn't just going through the motions anymore. I was making a choice, a decision to stop letting my family control me. It wasn't easy. There were days when I felt overwhelmed by the emptiness, by the loneliness, by the hurt that I had carried for so long. But today, for the first time in a long while, I felt like I could breathe. I was going to find my own way, even if it meant doing it alone. I wasn't going to beg for their attention anymore. I wasn't going to cry for their love. I had given them everything, and it was time for me to take something back for myself. I thought about what I needed to do next. I couldn't keep living in this house, in this space that had once been filled with laughter and love but now only felt like a prison. I needed to make a change. But it wasn't just about moving out or selling the house. It was about taking back my life, my identity. I wasn't just a mother or a grandmother anymore. I was Margaret. And I had spent so much time losing myself in my roles that I had forgotten who I was. It was time to remember. I decided to take a walk, to clear my head, to remind myself that the world was still out there. As I stepped outside, the fresh air hit me, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was taking a step towards something. I wasn't sure what it was yet, but I knew I had to keep moving. I wasn't going to let Sarah or Mark control my future. I had spent too many years accommodating their needs, putting their lives ahead of mine. Now, it was time for me to put myself first. I didn't need them to approve of my decisions. I didn't need their permission to live my life. I didn't need to explain myself to anyone. I knew I could do this on my own. I had done it before. I had raised Mark alone after Jack passed away. I had survived then, and I would survive now. I wasn't going to let my family's betrayal define me. I wasn't going to let their lack of appreciation break me. It was time to be strong, to stand tall, and to show them that I was more than just a mother or a grandmother. I was Margaret, and I had my own life to live. I didn't need their approval. I didn't need their love. I had myself. And that was enough. I walked for hours, not really sure where I was going, but I didn't mind. I didn't need a destination. I just needed to feel free, to feel like I had control over something in my life again. As the sun began to set, I made my way back home, my steps lighter, my heart a little less heavy. I had made a decision today. A decision to stop letting them define me, to stop letting their actions control my emotions. I had spent too long being the person they wanted me to be. But now, I was going to be the person I was meant to be. I didn't need anyone's permission to do that. And from now on, I wasn't going to feel guilty about it. The next few days felt like a blur, but there was a clarity that I hadn't had before. I had taken the first step in reclaiming my life, and now I felt different. The weight that had been pressing down on me, the feeling of being lost and insignificant, was slowly lifting. I had walked away from the phone call with Sarah, determined to never feel like I had to justify my existence again. But I knew that wasn't enough. I couldn't just stop there. I had to confront Mark. I needed to know where his loyalty lay. He was my son, the one I had raised, but I had started to realize that maybe I didn't know him as well as I thought. I had spent years thinking that everything was fine, that my family was a reflection of the love I had poured into it, but now I saw the cracks, the lies, and the indifference. One afternoon, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a photo of Mark and his family. A younger version of him, smiling, standing next to me and Jack on a family vacation. We looked happy, but that was before everything started to fall apart. That was when I still believed that family was everything. Now, it felt like a lie. The picture seemed so distant, like it belonged to another lifetime. I thought about how Sarah had been so quick to justify her actions, to make me feel like I was overreacting, as if my feelings didn't matter. And it was then that I realized how much I had allowed myself to be silenced. I had allowed them to treat me like an afterthought, like I didn't deserve a seat at the table. I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. The more I thought about it, the more I understood what I had to do. I had to stop waiting for them to come around. I had to stop waiting for Mark to see the truth. I wasn't going to beg for his love or his attention. I had to be strong enough to stand up for myself, even if it meant losing him. I wasn't afraid anymore. I had spent so many years walking on eggshells, worried about how my family would react to my needs, my desires. But now, I understood that I had to put myself first. I couldn't keep living in the shadow of their expectations. I deserved more than that. I deserved respect. I deserved to be heard. So, I called Mark. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice casual, almost as if nothing had happened. "Hi, Mark," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We need to talk." There was a pause on the other end. "About what?" he asked. His tone was guarded, but I could hear the slight nervousness in his voice. "About you, me, and the way things have been going lately," I said. I could feel my heart racing, but I wasn't going to back down. "I need you to listen to me, Mark." There was another long pause. "Okay," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I feel like I've been treated like I don't matter," I continued, the words coming out in a rush. "Like everything I've done for this family, everything I've sacrificed, means nothing. And I can't keep pretending that it's okay. I can't keep letting you and Sarah make me feel like I'm invisible." I heard him sigh on the other end. "Mom, I didn't mean to hurt you. I'm just trying to figure things out," he said, but his words didn't feel genuine. They felt rehearsed, like something he had said to Sarah before. "Figuring things out?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You're figuring things out while I'm sitting here, alone, on my birthday, with no one even bothering to call? While you're off enjoying a vacation with Sarah?" There was silence. "I'm sorry, okay? I didn't mean to leave you out." "It wasn't like that," he said, but I could hear the lack of sincerity in his voice. "Mark, it's been like that for a long time now. I've been making excuses for you, for Sarah, but I can't do it anymore. I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. You've changed, and I need to know if there's any part of you that still cares about me." He didn't answer right away. And when he did, it was with a tone I wasn't prepared for. "I don't know what you want from me, Mom. Things have changed. I have my own life now, and I can't keep trying to please you all the time." The words hit me like a slap. "So, what? That's it? You're done with me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I'm not done with you. But I can't keep living my life based on your expectations," he said. "I have my own family now, my own priorities." The finality in his voice stung. I could feel the tears welling up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I had to stay strong. "I understand," I said, my voice shaking. "I've done everything for you, Mark, but I can't keep doing this. I can't keep begging for your love, for your attention. I'm done." There was a long silence, and for the first time in our conversation, I didn't feel like he was trying to defend himself. I knew then, with a heavy heart, that I had to let go. Mark wasn't the son I had once known, and I couldn't keep holding on to the memory of who he used to be. I had to let him go, just as I had to let go of the idea that my family would ever be what I had hoped for. It had been a week since my conversation with Mark, and despite the weight of the words we exchanged, something had shifted inside me. I had made the decision to move forward, to stop waiting for things to get better on their own. The hurt was still there, but the anger, the sense of betrayal, had given way to a kind of quiet resolve. I wasn't going to wait for Mark or Sarah to change, to realize how they had treated me. I wasn't going to waste any more time hoping they would come around. I had spent too many years trying to please everyone else. It was my turn now. The days after that phone call were strange. There were moments when the pain would hit me, unexpected and sharp, like a jagged stone lodged in my chest. I would sit in the living room, staring at the empty chairs around the fireplace, remembering when we used to sit together as a family. I missed those days, the days when it felt like we were a real family. But those days were gone, and no amount of longing was going to bring them back. I had to learn to let go, and that was harder than I had imagined. One evening, I decided to take a walk through the neighborhood. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with the soft pink and orange hues of the setting sun. As I walked, my mind wandered. I thought about everything that had happened, about how much had changed over the years. I thought about my husband, Jack, and how I used to be the one he leaned on, the one he loved unconditionally. I missed him more than I could put into words. But I also knew that Jack would have wanted me to be strong, to take care of myself. He wouldn't want me to waste my days grieving over people who had stopped caring about me. And so, I kept walking, each step feeling more and more like I was moving away from the past, away from the hurt that had been my life for so long. I had spent too much time focusing on everyone else, on their needs, their happiness. It was time to focus on mine. The more I walked, the more I realized that I had been waiting for someone else to fix things for me. I had been waiting for Mark and Sarah to come back and apologize, to see the hurt they had caused. But that wasn't going to happen. I was the only one who could fix this. I was the only one who could take control of my life again. It wasn't easy, and I knew it wouldn't be. There were days when I felt like giving up, when the weight of the loneliness seemed too much to bear. But I refused to give in. I wasn't going to let my family's actions define me. I wasn't going to let their indifference break me. When I got home that evening, I sat down at the kitchen table, a sense of calm settling over me. The house was still quiet, but it didn't feel as empty anymore. I realized that I had been waiting for them to fill the space, to fill the void in my heart, but I had been overlooking the fact that I had everything I needed inside me. I didn't need anyone's approval, anyone's validation. I had been so caught up in trying to make everyone else happy that I had forgotten to make myself happy. And that was the most important thing. I didn't know what the future held. I didn't know if Mark and Sarah would ever come around, if they would ever realize what they had done. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let them control my happiness anymore. I wasn't going to wait for them to give me permission to live my life. The next day, I decided to take the first step. I called a realtor. It was time to sell the house. It wasn't just about the house, though. It was about starting fresh, about taking back control. I had spent so many years living in the shadow of my family's expectations, in a home that no longer felt like mine. It was time for a change, for a new chapter. The process wasn't easy, but I felt a sense of relief as I signed the papers. I was letting go of the past, but I was also embracing the future. The house was no longer a symbol of my failures or my disappointments. It was just a house, and I was moving on. As the days went by, I began to notice a shift within myself. I was no longer defined by my relationships with others. I was Margaret, and I had a life of my own to live. I was going to find my own happiness, on my own terms. I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my own family, stand in the way of that. I wasn't sure what the future held, but for the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was living. And that was enough. It had been a few weeks since I sold the house, and the new place, though much smaller, felt like a fresh start. I had spent so many years living in the shadow of my family's needs, trying to make them happy, that I had forgotten what it meant to make myself happy. The house wasn't just a home, it was a symbol of everything I had sacrificed, everything I had lost. But now, in this new space, I felt a sense of freedom. The walls weren't filled with memories of disappointment, of moments I had tried to hold on to in vain. It was just me, the empty rooms, and the chance to rebuild. Every morning, I would sit by the window with a cup of coffee, watching the world go by. There was something peaceful about it, something comforting in the silence. I didn't need anyone else to complete me anymore. I had finally come to terms with the fact that I couldn't control how others treated me. I couldn't control what Mark and Sarah decided, but I could control how I responded to them. And I chose not to let them have power over my happiness any longer. One afternoon, I received a call from Sarah. My heart skipped a beat when I saw her name on the screen. I wasn't sure what to expect. The last time we spoke, it was a heated conversation, and I hadn't heard from her since. I almost didn't answer, but something inside me told me I had to. I pressed the phone to my ear and said, "Hello." "Margaret," she said, her voice softer than I expected. "I know it's been a while, but I need to talk to you." I didn't respond right away. I wasn't sure what to make of this sudden change in tone. I've been thinking a lot about everything that's happened, she continued. I know I've hurt you, and I'm sorry for that. I didn't mean for things to get so out of hand. I've been dealing with a lot, and I should have handled things differently. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. It was hard to believe that Sarah, the woman who had pushed me away for so long, was apologizing. It felt almost surreal. I don't know what to say, I replied, my voice calm but guarded. It's been hard for me too. I've spent so much time trying to please everyone else, trying to keep the peace, and I've neglected myself in the process. But I'm done with that. I'm not going to keep allowing anyone to walk all over me. There was a pause on the other end, and then she spoke again. I understand that. I really do. And I want to make things right, if I can. Her words surprised me. I hadn't expected an apology, let alone an attempt at reconciliation. But something inside me told me that I needed to hear her out, even if I didn't know what the future held. I don't know if we can go back to how things were, I said, my voice steady. But I think it's time for me to move on. I've spent too long holding on to the past, to people who don't respect me. I can't do that anymore. I get that, she said. I just want you to know that I'm sorry. And I hope, in time, we can find a way to make amends. Maybe, I said, and I meant it. But I'm not making any promises. I need to focus on myself now, on healing. There was another long pause, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It felt like a weight was lifting off both of us. I understand, she finally said. Take care of yourself, Margaret. I hope you find the peace you deserve. I will, I said, and for the first time. In a long time, I believed it. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. It wasn't the closure I had hoped for, but it was a start. It was a sign that maybe, just maybe, things could get better. I wasn't sure if I could ever fully forgive Sarah, or if I would ever trust her again. But I didn't need to. I didn't need anyone to validate my worth. I had finally come to the realization that I didn't need anyone to make me feel whole. I was enough, just as I was. And for the first time in years, that thought felt freeing. I had spent too much of my life defining myself through my relationships with others. But now, I was defining myself by who I was, not by what anyone else thought of me. And that was the most liberating feeling of all. I was moving forward, one step at a time, and nothing, not even my family's rejection, could take that away from me.